Tonight, we're talking about resilience, talking about bouncing back. Resilience is what inspires us. It's what inspires us in multiple ways. Inspiration is one of the things that actually motivates us. Resilience comes from really being connected to other people. I can't overstress just being there for your kids, just being empathic, just being connected. People always want to read these parenting books and find lots of tricks. This is the trick. Generally, more than half the population considers them an optimist. Depending on the study you look at, sometimes it's as much as 80%. It's usually over 50%. What I'm going to try to do tonight is turn you into a realistic optimist. And I'm going to let you know the best time to use optimism and the best time to use a kind of pessimism. It's not one or the other, they're actually tools. Optimists persevere much longer. When they're given a task, they will shoot for the goal. And also, when they are confronted with setbacks, which is what we're going to talk about tonight, because we're talking about resilience, they tend to bounce back from the setbacks much better, because what we found is optimists have a different explanatory style. They have a different way of explaining things. The classic example is to take a test. When a kid takes a test and they don't do well, they can think, great, I did poorly on this test, I'm going to do poorly on all tests. But an optimistic explanatory style that we can teach kids would be that you failed this test. That's just one test. Tomorrow you're going to take another test. It's going to be unstable. It's going to be specific. An optimistic explanatory style would say that if I failed this test, I failed it in this class. I'm having difficulty in math class. But I'm not going to start failing tests in every other subject. It's external. So that's not giving up any responsibility, but the idea of when a kid fails a test, they go, maybe I didn't get enough sleep that night. I was pretty hungry. I prepared really well, but I didn't prepare for that stuff. Or, by the way, you can still say, you know what? I just didn't study hard enough for that test. In the pessimistic explanatory style, it becomes internal. You go, you know what? I'm not that smart. I'm not good enough. It's me. One of the big complaints about this is people get very worried that you're going to say everything is external. You're going to become a total narcissist. You're going to say everything is the fault of someone else. The problem with that is it's not based in reality. That's the big thing we give our kids. We are their reality check. Kids are developing their explanatory style right through adolescence. Kids have a very interesting perception of reality. It's very different than ours, actually. When you are struck in an airport, you get to say to your kids, another plane's going to come, meaning it's unstable. We may have to take a different airline. We're going to figure this out. We have a locus of self-control. Locus of self-control is another one of the essential characteristics of resilient kids. When we're talking about resilience, in a way, we're really talking about stress. That stress is everywhere. Stress is everything we do. Every time we learn, we change, every time we perform. And there is an optimal level of stress where we're going to have an optimal performance. But every time we're having stress, we're using our resilience. That's why resilience is so essential. Sometimes we don't notice it. They talk about how that belief makes them feel. Really trying to draw their attention. When a kid says, I'm not smart enough, how does it make you feel? Does it make me feel good? I'm going to fail. That belief doesn't make me feel good either. I don't have enough time. That doesn't feel good. Most of those beliefs, when you're confronted with that kind of adversity, they don't make you feel good. And then you get to do what's called disputation. That's a big word for a kid. You don't have to teach these words to the kids, but the idea is there. You get to offer alternatives. Another big problem a lot of kids have is when kids have too many challenges in school, when their resilience is constantly being tested, and they develop a little learned helplessness, they start to do something where even when they do well, they say, oh, I just got lucky. You get to acknowledge the feeling, always starting with acknowledging the feeling. That's where you are. This disputation is not meaning just say, that's crazy, you're not stupid, because then you're just arguing with them. They still have that feeling. You can't prove them wrong. And that's the only thing we're going to start measuring. What if we only measured how hard you worked? Or, well, if you only feel like you got lucky when you do well, how could we change that? What could we do so that you felt like you did well because you did something? You want to get them to start to answer these questions. You want to help them develop that. That's your job. You get to translate for them. The next time they do well on a test and you say, okay, maybe some of it was luck, maybe you studied the right thing, but some of it was also because you worked hard. How does it feel that maybe 40% is because you worked hard and 60% is luck? Does that feel better? Yes. Good. Now let's try to get it so that it's 60% effort and 40% luck. If you can't measure change for a kid, they won't believe in it. If you can measure change, you're more likely to create more change. Change promotes itself. We can feel like we have some control over the world, and that feeling has been shown to be highly linked to well-being. We have the opportunity to teach kids that they have some control over their lives all the time. And one way that I really like doing this is using the word consequence versus using the word punishment. Consequence is one of the ideas of how to give kids that feeling that they have control over their actions, that they make choices, and those choices have repercussions. 75% of people will experience at least one trauma in life. A trauma, as I explain it to kids, is when you yourself are shaken to the core. The core of you is disturbed. A way of looking at the world and feeling safe in the world is upset. When a trauma happens in life, when something really scary happens to us, our amygdala takes over our brain. It's actually one of the oldest parts of our brain. The amygdala takes over and it shuts down two areas of our brain. It shuts down our memory, our hippocampus, the way we encode things, and it also shuts down our ability to speak. Scared silent, totally real. The fight or flight system goes off when something really scary happens. When the fight or flight system goes off, three things happen. The first one is you freeze. You freeze, and then your body decides, should I go into fight or flight? And then it does that for as long as it needs to. For as long as it feels threatened, it will stay in fight or flight until you become exhausted. When you teach people just the basics of what trauma is, they seem to experience less trauma in life. The ability to anticipate things is considered our greatest defense in life. Our most immature defense is denial, not knowing what's going on. But it's also interesting, after a trauma, there's a really healthy period of denial. In fact, there is a really normal period when you're just supposed to be quiet. And the way you're going to be for your kid, if, knock on wood, there is a trauma, is you're going to be quiet. You're going to just be with them. You're going to watch them. You're going to see how they're reacting. Not only do we know that if you're aware of what post-traumatic stress is, you're potentially going to experience less of it, but we also have some indication that a lot of people experience what's called post-traumatic growth. If you can be aware that following a challenge in life, a normal setback, you grow and you learn, and this is a very young field, really just started in the 1990s out of the University of North Carolina and in England. The idea that if we know that we learn from resilience, we also know that we learn a lot from trauma. In fact, being able to tolerate traumatic stress is sort of the engine for how we learn about traumatic growth. people find an appreciation for life, newfound possibilities for themselves, more personal strength, and most importantly, their relationships improve. This is not immediately applicable, hopefully, to any of our kids, but I believe that this is one of the things that should be in every parent's toolbox. This, who knows what this is? Anybody? Well, besides you, which Disneyland ride? Life is a lot like a roller coaster. You go up, you go down, you go up, you go down. And she liked it. She pointed out, she said, you know, I'm just so surprised. I was scared, frightened, a little bit sick, but I was also thrilled and excited. When you're at dinner or some other time, I'd like you to tell a story of resilience to your kids. Tell a story of where you bounced back or you overcame something. See what your kids can learn about resilience from you. Thanks.